Here we go. Okay, so I think that there's several things to consider that I like to consider when I am writing a letter. One is to be honest, and so Anthony brought up, what do we do if a student comes to us and asks us for a letter of recommendation and we don't feel comfortable writing it? And I would say that you can, in a very nice way, say, you know what, I might not be the best person to write this. Maybe you want to, choose or ask a teacher who knows you a little bit better, or, I don't think there's anything wrong with being honest. I think it would be better for you to say, I don't feel comfortable writing this, and have the student look elsewhere, than to write a letter that is not honest, or where you're trying to make it seem better than it is. So I'm all for honesty. I think it's really important that we be specific. The people that we're sending these letters to, so if it's employers, if it's colleges, they see these all the time, and they see a lot of cookie cutter templates where you can tell. I think it's really obvious if you just use the same letter and cut and paste the student's name every time. I think if you can give really specific critiques or praise about the student and give specific stories to support what you're saying, I think that makes a much, much stronger letter. So that goes into my next point: provide specific examples that illustrate what you say about the student. So if you say this student has great leadership qualities, then give an example that happened in your class that illustrates those qualities. I think if you write more like a personal narrative, I think that really speaks, it's more genuine and really speaks to the person who's reading your letter. Obviously, this is probably obvious to anyone, but we do want to refrain from including anything negative. And that's why I think if you don't think you can write a positive letter, it's better to suggest to the student to ask another instructor. Avoid using too many adjectives. If you're going on and with like effusive praise about the student and you just have a string of adjectives, I just don't think that sounds very genuine. And I think then it also kind of loses the impact. So if you think that the student is really kind, I think instead of using a string of adjectives to show that, it's better to tell a story. So it's that whole show, don't tell. So tell a story that illustrates their kindness. And then some things that we want to focus on would be work ethic, character, academic achievement, leadership qualities, challenges the student has overcome. I have helped a lot of students write letters or college essays to try to get into college, and I always try to go from, I tell them to approach it from, here's some challenge in life and this is how I overcame it, and kind of to tell their story that way. And I think that works well also in these letters of recommendation, to frame it that, this was a hardship and this is how the student overcame it. Okay, so more things to consider. I kind of mentioned some of these about being original. So we don't just want to use the same one where you're copy and pasting the student's name. Sometimes I've even heard of horrible situations where they forgot, the professor or the instructor put in the wrong name. And so then it was obvious that this wasn't a new letter, that you were just recycling. I think it's good to ask the student why he or she asked you in particular to write the letter. Because if you ask the student, they might say something like, well, when I wrote this essay, you wrote this comment on it and it made me feel really good. Or when we were in class, you specifically praised me for this action. And by the student telling you that, it might spark a memory for you about something that happened in the class that you can then center your letter around. Try to show why the student would be a good fit for the school, program, or scholarship that they're asking you to write the letter for. So if it's a social justice scholarship, try to show how the student has really worked to further social justice, either in your class or at Triton. I think it's really good if you try to mold the letter to fit whatever they're asking you to write about. Proofread is so important. Please run your spelling and grammar check. I'm going to show you how you can go into Word and change the spelling and grammar so that it looks for different stylistic things. It's also really good to read the letter out loud after you've read it. I always tell my students that we know as the writer what we wanted to say in our head, but when we read it out loud and we hear it, then we can tell if something doesn't flow or doesn't make sense or there's a grammatical mistake. So reading things out loud is a great editing tool. And then it's always great to have somebody else read it just to check. I use a business letter template format. And so I have one here. I know it's kind of small, but I also have included this link to the Purdue Owl, which I use this for everything. It's the Purdue Owl Writing Lab. It's through Purdue University, and it's their online writing lab. So they have how to write a basic business letter. They have all the parts of it. They have each part described, like, so in case you have questions about what goes in the body, it tells you exactly what your closing should look like. And then another thing I love about it is they give you an example. So they show you exactly how to set it up in the block format. And so every time I have to write a business letter, I always pull this up just to make sure that I'm doing it correctly. Okay, so I'm going to stop for a second, and I think maybe I had a comment or question. So now what I would like us to do is I have 3 examples of letters of recommendation that have been written for students, and I am going to try to figure out how I can do this. Break us up into groups, and I'm going to have you read those letters of recommendation. And what I would like you to look for, hold on. Okay, well, I'm going to put you in your breakout groups, and then I'm going to email somebody in the breakout group their example of the paper, and then we will go from there. So you're looking for 1 strength, 1 weakness, and 1 thing that you would change. Okay, so I'm going to put you in the breakout groups, and then I will send you the, the essay. Okay, so this was the one about my coworker who was applying for a scholarship. So does anybody want to comment, whatever group read this one, does someone want to comment maybe on a strength and then a weakness or something you would change? Just go ahead and turn your mic on if you're going to talk, because I muted everybody.
Sure, so we could start. When reading this letter, at least from what we noticed, is that the letter really started to list a lot of the things that Sally had done, but didn't get to a particular theme, if I can call it that. There was just a lot of things that were thrown together to kind of try to tell her achievements or things that she had accomplished, but really didn't elaborate on an actual storytelling experience and how she was able to achieve those. So, for example, in the first paragraph here, it states that while taking ED 504, her writing was taken as a model, but we don't necessarily know exactly what ED 504 means or what type of class it is, and why it was such a great accomplishment in that sense that she was chosen and what that kind of did for her. Another thing that we noticed is too that they didn't check the spelling here. So they didn't go through a spell check on the second paragraph. The 3rd sentence has 40% Latin X. Like, I don't know if that's supposed to not have an X there. Population. We just noticed that that one also didn't seem like they went through spelling checks here.
Okay.
And then I don't know if anybody else wants to add anything else.
Thank you. I think that's a really good point, that there was a lot of there was a lot of telling but not showing. So like you said, there was a list of accomplishments, but then there wasn't, like, you didn't really feel like you got to know the person personally, right, through this one. Does anyone else want to comment on that one?
Yes. In our group, we discussed that at first I didn't even know what the letter was for. because it didn't specify in the beginning until you get to the end. And most of the letters that I've written had, in some institutions, have you to introduce exactly what it's for, if it's for a scholarship or entry into a program, or even just a letter of recommendation. It didn't really say, even though it said, you know, for the scholarship, but what scholarship? I don't know what scholarship it's for. Is it for a academic scholarship, a leadership scholarship? It didn't specify what it was for. And then looking at your letter, I thought it was ours, but maybe it was just ours in Google Docs. One of the things I pointed out, it shouldn't overlap to page 2, but maybe that was just a misprint for in Google Docs or something like that. But yeah, there was a lot of positives in this case. For me, I didn't feel that it gave enough strength to the institution that she's coming from in order to say that she was a good student. I know that it says the GPA, but it really didn't emphasize that. And some of the things that I've noticed in most of letters that I've written to other institutions, they want you to mention about, well, in this case, Triton, and what the student contribute to the institution in a sense of leadership or demonstration of leadership, or what is specifying to the scholarship itself. So if it's going towards a minority scholarship, oh, I hear an echo. Is that me? If it's going to a minority scholarship or going to some type of club or organization or something that directly relates to the scholarship and directly relates to the criteria that the institution may send out.
Yes, I think that's a really good point. And so you said that you need at the beginning to say, like, what is this for? And I totally agree. And then so you might say she's got a great GPA, but what does that really tell me about her, right? I definitely need more information. So I don't know if you guys can see. I don't think that I sent, did anyone read this one that I have on the screen right now? I don't think I sent this one. So here's the third one I wanted to share with you. And so I'll just read a few because we are almost at the end. I'll just read a few of the paragraphs, and then if someone wants to comment on if you feel like this one is a stronger example or if it still is suffering from some of the things the other two did. I'm writing to highly recommend Karina Villadia for admittance to the University of Illinois at Chicago. I am a full-time faculty member at Triton College in River Grove. I teach developmental writing. I have taught at Triton in the College Readiness Department for the last 5 years. 2 years ago, Karina began working with me as a peer mentor in my Rhetoric 095 class. This is the lowest level writing class into which students place. We deal with fundamental concepts of grammar, paragraph writing, and essay writing. Karina's job was to work one-on-one with my students, both during the class itself and for periods outside of class. Karina did such a phenomenal job during her first semester with me that I continued to request her each semester for the following 2 years. I have been fortunate to be able to have Karina peer mentor in 2 of my classes each semester. Because of this, I have spent a great deal of time working with Karina and have knowledge of her abilities as both a peer mentor and a student herself. I can honestly not think of a better example of type of student UIC would want to both attend and represent its institution. Karina is smart, she is hardworking, she is dependable. For example, there have been several times that I have had to cancel class at the last minute due to illness or an unexpected situation. Most peer mentors are happy to have the day off. However, each time this has happened, Karina has told my students that she will hold additional office hours during the hours the class would have met. This has been extremely helpful for both myself as an instructor and for my students. Karina is an excellent peer mentor. She never talks down to the students. They trust her and feel comfortable asking her for help. Because of her competence and intelligence, I have given her added responsibility over the years where she will edit students' writing and provide assistance to substitute teachers in the classroom. Students in the classes where Karina is the peer mentor have performed consistently better over the semesters than students in classes without a mentor. I will be incredibly sad to lose her at the end of the school year. She has been a wonderful asset in my classes, and my students have directly benefited from her work with them. Karina often comes to my classroom before her class to study and work on homework and other classes. She is diligent in her studies, but she also really loves learning. She has often brought up her classes to me and talked about something interesting that she learned that day. I have great respect for her as a person, a student, and a peer mentor. I know she will go on to do great things with her life. There's another mistake. and continue to positively impact the lives of others she touches as she has impacted my life and the lives of my students. She would make an excellent addition to the student population at UIC. I cannot recommend any more highly than this the college admit her. Please do not hesitate to contact me. So I just proved my point about reading out loud because I caught 2 mistakes as I read that out loud. So does anybody want to comment about strengths or weaknesses of this one?
I think as a strength, I think you sort of gave a good, I think, a good background of how you think that she has um, come up from struggle and basically have succeeded. Um, so I think that's a strength. I would say that.
Okay, thank you.
I think it's a great letter. I think it reads passionately, your support for her, and I also think that it gives a lot of information. Sorry about the beeping on the thing. But what was I going to say? I maybe tighten it up a little bit. I don't know if it's a little long.
Okay.
I think there are some places in which they're kind of the themes are the same, but because I know people are just kind of impatient about reading things, so that's what I'm thinking. It's not that I don't think it's a good letter, but
that is a good point. And some of them even have a word requirement, right? Like they only want it to be a page, or you have to fit it into a certain form. So definitely, I think concise is better. I am going to jump really quickly because I'm supposed to leave time at the end for questions. Back to the PowerPoint. I can send this out to everybody. Oh my goodness. Oh, here we go. So after the breakout sessions, there's just the 3 different examples that we looked at in class today, and then some final thoughts. Make sure you check in the grammar and spelling settings in Microsoft Word. Write multiple drafts with time in between. Read it out loud, as I said. And then check the original request to make sure that your letter aligns with what is asked, because a lot of times they're asking specific things. Like they're saying, we want examples of the student's character and leadership ability. And if you're just writing about their academic ability, you're not, meeting what the question was. And so, yeah, the only other thing I wanted to show you guys is in Word. So if you go up to Word and you see there's this design button right here, and right above there's a little arrow pointing down. So I always go into this. If you go to More Commands, and then you click on Proofing, and then over here it says Writing Style, Grammar and Refinements. You want it on Grammar and Refinements, or sometimes it says, depending on what version of Word you have, Grammar and Style, because then it will check for things like contractions, because you're not supposed to use contractions in formal writing, passive voice. So it just does more of a grammar check than just spelling and grammar, and so I always like to do that, even though, like I said, there were two mistakes that it didn't catch in that. So does anybody have any questions? Because I never go over, and we're going over today. It was because I had all those technological mishaps. Does anybody have any questions or comments that you would like to share before we leave? I just think that the more you can show instead of tell, the stronger your letter will be. Yes, Anthony, go ahead.
Oh no, I thought it was good. I enjoyed it. It just every little thing that I can use to help write a better letter is good. So I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And I just saw a question about Grammarly. Let me just answer this really quickly. Is Grammarly a good proofreading resource? Yes, but I think that you have to, so part of it is free, like the basic version is free. And so the one you pay for, I would say the basic version is not much better than Microsoft Word. I think Microsoft Word has really good spelling and grammar features. But if you pay for the Grammarly, then I think it would be better. Anyone else?
Jenny, if I may.
Yes.
Jenny?
Best one.
Can you hear me? Oh, okay. I'm glad you pointed out in regards to two things. One, making sure that the institution, based on the institution, what they're asking for, because I've seen colleagues of ours who actually did not abide by that, and the student was letter of recommendation was rejected. It's because of that. And two, you want to make sure from the institution if they're sending out as a letter or if you have to type in for the question. Because you're right, sometimes they're asking for specific illustrations or examples of what the student did at your institution, why you're recommending them, and proof of not just their GPA, but proof of the student's academic ability.
And you know what you just made me think of when you said that, Twan? I would say it would be good to put it on Triton letterhead, which, since we're not in the office, I don't know if anyone knows if marketing has that electronically. Do they have the letterhead electronically that you can download? It might be in the portal. That's something that I need to check on. Thank you, because I do think that that makes more of an impact if it's on the school letterhead.
It does. It does,
Yeah.
because I had to do one for a student for a job, and he told me that they never received it, but the institution, the workplace, sent me a letter back saying they wanted to make sure I was a faculty member at Triton College. So yeah, I had to put it on letterhead for Triton College.
Wow. Wow. Well, thank you guys so much for joining. You were a great audience. I'm so sorry about kicking out Monroe and some of the other technological problems we had. But I really enjoyed meeting all of you, and good luck the rest of your semester. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to email me. It's just Jennifer Giangrego at triton.edu.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Good to see you again, Monroe.
Bye, thank you.